All right. Hey, this is Clayton Olson, and I'm here with my teaching partner and partner in crime, Jack Butler. How's it
Howdy.
going, buddy?
It's good. It's great to be here. I'm excited for this conversation. Thanks
Yes,
for having me on.
me too, man. Me too. I'm going to switch over to the comments here, and I'm going to see who is joining. So far, it looks like it's just you and me right now, and
Let's enjoy
we'll give
some
it a
quiet
few minutes. There we
time.
go.
I think it'll pick up.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about today?
Well, I think that talking about how self-love directly relates to dating and relationships is going to be huge. We've got a couple people joining right now, so if you are just joining us, welcome.
Hey.
Please type in the comment box if you're here and you can see us and hear us. And feel free to drop any questions that you might have that you're currently struggling with dating and relationships. Jack and I are going to have a casual conversation around self-love. And we're going to talk about how this is a fundamental piece to dating and relationships. And, you know, as I was getting a drink of water to prepare for this, I was just thinking about like how self-love is this term that gets thrown around so much. And it's like, oh yeah, just love yourself. Right. And if you just love yourself, your life will be so much better. Your relationships will be better. And I want to go deep. I want to actually pull some of these concepts apart because I think with the clients that I work with, it's a common question. It's like, well, what does it actually mean? How do you do that when you've got so much negative self-talk going through your mind? Or how do you love yourself in the midst of like desiring something and then maybe that like something not going the way that you want it to? Like it can be really nebulous.
Yep.
So we've got Eva, we've got Fem, we've got Sam, Arun Siri. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. Thank you. Welcome. And if you have any questions that you'd like to throw out, any challenges that you'd like Jack and I to address over the course of the next 45 minutes to an hour, please feel free to do so. Welcome if you're just joining us. We're going to be diving into the concept of self-love and how that relates and impacts dating and relationships. We're going to take, I would say, a detailed angle on this in some ways and try to unpack some things that are super important and foundational to living a fulfilled life. Saul, Maria, Vicky, thank you. And if you're just joining us, feel free to type in the comment box. Let us know that you can hear and see us. And Jack, I'm going to throw this over to you for a moment. And just, I'd love for you to riff on it. Just if you were to take a first broad stroke,
Yeah.
What do you see as the relationship that self-love has in someone's dating and relationship love life? How do you see those two things being connected?
Well, I'm going to start just by sharing something personal about self-love. Picking up on what you were saying, I used to hear, obviously, people talk about this a lot, like this is the answer. And it didn't really land with me, right? Now, partly that might be that I've been lucky that perhaps I've never had like a strongly negative core self-image, right? So maybe I've never been like really hard on myself and really down on myself. But it really only landed for me when I realized there are things that I'm willing to do for other people that I find it quite hard to do for myself. Right? So there's, I would be willing to run you a bath, but would I run myself a bath? I'd be willing to cook dinner for you, but would I cook a nice dinner for me? I'd be willing to find some energy when I'm really haven't got much to go and help someone or pick them up or meet them in their hour of need. But maybe I'm not very good at prioritizing myself in my hour of need, right? So if, for example, self-love hasn't been a most obvious kind of concept to you, that might be one thing you can just think about. Are there things that you would do for other people that you wouldn't be able to do for yourself? And this is particularly important if you've had the experience of like losing yourself in relationships, right? Or feeling like it was on his terms, right? Or the power in the relationship is kind of over there, and that somehow you are, the pleaser or the victim, or like there's these things that happen to you in relationship where you've sort of been the innocent one and someone else has perpetrated something against you. I think self-love is the answer to that, because part of self-love is saying, oh, hang on a minute, there's things that I'm taking in this connection that I wouldn't invite someone that I love to take that, or I wouldn't invite them to have that boundary, but I'm not very able to have that for myself. So yeah, it's kind of like a wide ranging, all permeating experience. If there are things that are happening in relationship that you want them not to happen, this is one avenue of inquiry. It's just to kind of say, hang on a minute, if you were fully honoring yourself, fully having your own back, and we can get into how do you do that, but just if you were able to do that, would you be participating or co-creating in the way that you are in this relationship, right? So it's actually inviting us to be in a stance of, I am a participant, I am a co-creator, I'm not just a victim of everything that goes on here. I do get to say no, I do get to walk away in some instances. So what's actually kind of going on? And sometimes you have to slow it right down to really notice, where am I in this? Sometimes we're so caught up, or we're so over there, or we're so traumatized, it's really hard to even just slow down into ourselves and notice, what's my role in this? How am I orienting to myself? If I were your, guardian angel looking in, what would I be noticing about how you're relating to yourself in the unfolding of what you're in?
Beautiful. Yeah. Something that comes to mind as I hear you talking is, you mentioned one way of getting perspective is to imagine yourself as a guardian angel, maybe watching the situation from the outside.
Right.
And I could see also, like, imagine that you've got a daughter or a son who's in that situation from the outside. How would you instruct or advise them to be in that situation? And that kind of perspective, it seems like it kind of gets our own sense of, like, maybe a lack of deservingness or a compromised self-respect out of the way for a moment. And it's like, if we were just loving our child and wanted the absolute best for them unconditionally, how would we advise them to show up in this situation? So I love that, because we're touching a little bit into the how you might be able to just shift into a perspective where you have a little bit more access to these elements you're talking about. And I also hear you saying, just really quickly, a couple of things that I'm noticing that you're distinguishing are, here's some signs that you may not love yourself as much as you could, right? Or here's how a lack of self-love might show up in a relationship, which is, it sounds like not being able to stand for what you want, not being able to identify your boundaries, beginning to lose yourself in the relationship, where maybe you start to, the things that you desire, the things that actually make you happy, you lose touch with. And you're just completely over there rather than connected to here. I think those are really great things to distinguish, because it's like, you could say, well, how do you stop losing yourself in relationship? Or how do you draw boundaries? Or how do you respect yourself in relationship? And it's like, it all leads up to this pathway of what is self-love.
Yeah, and just to say that, if any of this is touching on stuff that seems relevant in your life, like, this stuff isn't easy, right? In the sense, this is a path for most of us, and we have to have permission to learn, right? So even if you're noticing, maybe there are some ways that I don't fully respect myself, have some compassion there, right? We're not trying to judge you for that. We're trying to say, hey, there might be something here that could really help you. And it may take a little bit of practice over time, practicing, just to kind of name, I guess, in some ways, the unnamed is, you're talking about cultivating a different way of being, right? Is one way of talking about this, a different way of being where you are more loving towards yourself, right? And one of the things that can be difficult about that is what you may have been describing as love may be not just love in terms of how you orient to other people. Right. So you may have a love in your relationship. You may have some codependency. You may have some trauma bonding. You may have some unfinished business for childhood. Show me someone that doesn't. So sometimes there can be this perspective, well, I just loved him, right? And he treated me really bad. And that could be true. And it also could be, well, this thing you called I just loved him, if we got a little bit closer into that, is that fully true, or is there some other stuff that's happening there? Said differently, are there ways that you compromise your own authenticity in order to do this thing that you're calling love? And that, I think, is the thing we need to put the microscope on.
This is fascinating too, because when you say that, the word that comes to mind is this idea that like love is a sacrifice. right? It's a
Right.
sacrifice of myself for someone else. So I'm going to go ahead and just uh, let go and let go of all of my needs, all of my wants and my desires, and I'm gonna give you everything I can. And is that really
Well,
love at
I
that
think
point?
it's one strain of love, right? I think
Hmm.
love is like an essentially contested concept, is probably the fancy word. And it basically means, with words like democracy, justice, peace, love, it's hard to just pin it down and say, this is
Hmm.
the one singular definition that you should use. It's like,
Hmm.
no, it's a bit like, different types of snow and ice. There's lots of them when you actually look at it. So sacrificial love, I mean, if you have, a child that's completely dependent upon you,
Right.
there may be forms of sacrificial love that are absolutely appropriate, right? Or maybe
Yeah.
if you have a child that struggles to develop into what we would call full adulthood because there's some developmental difficulty, yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
Sacrificial love is going to be probably a big part of it. But if
Yeah.
that's the only flavor, or if there's not a sort of consciousness about that,
Hmm.
right? And that there's a sort of, as we would say, a kind of collapsing between that's the only way I experience love, and I'm always sort of automatically sacrificing myself for my partner, and they don't
Hmm.
even really know it, and maybe I'm not even acknowledging it. That's
Hmm.
where we might need to get a little bit more curious. Um,
So I love what you're saying, and just to mark this out. So it's not necessarily throwing away this idea of sacrificial love as something that's a territory that it should not be entered into. There's appropriate context or situations. Maybe you're with a
mm,
partner that develops some type of like illness, and it is in some ways feels like a bit of a sacrifice to stay with them. But it's like this is you are consciously doing what you're doing, and you're aware of it,
right.
versus it being an automatic program that is running
Yes.
that has you pick partners that continually ask you to sacrifice, get in situations in which you are
Mm,
continually sacrificing
mm,
yourself, and ultimately coming out the other end more bitter and maybe shut down even to the idea of love, which is what we
right.
see in a lot of the women that we work with at one phase of development.
Right. So if I'm sacrificing often or always to the detriment of my authentic needs, of course, over time, that's likely to equal resentment,
Yeah.
right? Because, yeah, I might be a mighty oak tree, right? And I'm willing to provide my shade for a lot of people, like maybe my whole community. There is a lot for me to give, right? Some people, I think, giving is a big part of what they came here to do, right?
Yeah.
It's a gift, but we also want to make sure it doesn't become an unconscious wound, right? And that oak tree is still going to need to take in a lot of nutrients and water and sunshine in order to provide its canopy to people, right? So there has to be some give and take of oxygen, right? And maybe it's like, wow, this is a super difficult year for you. You're finishing your exams, or you're starting a business, or you've got a family member that's passing or ill, and there is an orientation relationship where maybe I am giving a bit more than I'm receiving. But if
Yeah.
that is always the pattern in your relationships, right, you can look back historically and say that's the pattern. That's where we might want to get a little bit more curious. And we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? So we don't want to say don't give and don't sacrifice. It's just
Hmm.
hold them alongside, some other things. I can't quite get both hands in that are also important, right? Which is
Yeah.
also receiving, right? You might be a giver who came here to learn how to receive more,
Yeah.
including from yourself, right? That's the sort of ultimate part of. You often talk, Clayton, about responsibility as a in contrast to victimhood. So
Hmm.
responsible self-love is, I realize there is a self-love tank that does need to be filled, and I
Hmm.
am responsible for that. Of course, there are other love tanks, right? Love from a partner, love from community, love from God, love from your children or dog, or there's lots of
Hmm.
ways. But there is also, I think, this one tank that you can't not fill.
Hmm.
Did you agree with that? Like, you could have sort of love from all these different other places, but I think there is this place that's actually about your relationship with yourself that has almost got its own, container that needs filling.
Yeah, I think it's key for that kind of love to be something that is self-generating within you,
Mm,
right? I believe that otherwise you can end up becoming, in some ways, like having a codependent relationship with those things outside of you to give you the reflection that you
yes.
could be responsible for giving yourself,
Right.
right? So when you can generate that in yourself, it allows relationships to be less transactional, where you're showing up and you're trying to give something so you can get something back, but rather you
Mm,
have an
hmm.
offering, a way that you see yourself, which is uh, a powerful gift to give anybody in relationship. I know that some of the most valuable relationships that I have been in have been in with people who I have been able to learn how to respect myself through maybe them respecting themselves, through them honoring their boundaries. It's almost there's a permission that gets unlocked for me to be able to do that. That is actually a way. There's a model for it in relationship.
Yeah.
Really quick though, we've got about 81 people who have joined us live. If you are just joining us, Jack and I are riffing on this concept of self-love, attempting to demystify. And you know, I don't think we can ever actually reduce it down to a single concept here. I think there's what you were talking about. There's so many different things that go into it. Yeah. But thank you for joining. If you've got any questions related to self-love, any questions related to dating or a relationship challenge that you're currently in the middle of, send a comment over here on the right, and we will address it at some point during this live stream. Something else that I just wanted to put in here, I think one of the reasons like we are focusing on self-love and this idea of relationship with self and why it is so fundamental and foundational to being in relationship in a masterful way is because we've got this program called Becoming the One that we've created. And some of you watching this may be a part of it, but others, if you're wanting to take any of your learning deeper with us, I just want to put this on the screen. We've got a $1 trial that we're giving people to join this program that we've created we've had for about 3 years now, 700 women in it. We know that COVID has created some rough times for people. Typically the ticket price on this, if you get it from my website, it's like $9.97. Sometimes we do a 50% discount. But today and until further notice, we're doing a $1 trial for women that want to get in closer to some of these concepts and really begin to build a foundation where you can feel free, you can feel in love with yourself, you can feel empowered in the world of dating. And all of that, the whole landscape is changing right now, especially with COVID. So, you know, I'm just curious, what have you seen as some of the challenges, perhaps in this new time right now with the landscape, the way that it has changed with the shutdown and with online dating and with people being almost in long distance relationships that otherwise they wouldn't be in long distance relationships if the lockdown wasn't here. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, well, just one thing I want to say before that, just briefly, because you mentioned the program, is just the reason we called that Becoming the One is because there's so much focus in this territory on like finding the one, right? And what's important when you dial up your own self-love is that there's a kind of sufficiency that means I may still really want relationship, but I'm kind of okay in my aloneness. I'm okay in my singleness, and I can relate to the gifts of singleness. Right? Rather than there's this missing piece, and until I have that missing piece, I will have no fulfillment. Right? This is like, actually, there's a kind of self-love that gives you a deeper foundation in your own life, right? You're still going to want relationship, you're still going to want things, but it's not so much of a, I can't breathe until I have this, right? Because that's not a great stance to go into a relationship for, because I don't want him to be the solution to your problems, just in the same way that I warn people, you know, you don't want solutions guy where you're the solution to his problem, right? That is sort of setting itself up for a kind of codependency, I think, versus, yeah, I'm here, I'm doing me, I'm not fully healed, right? I'm on the path, I'm a work in progress, and I wanted this relationship with you, but not that you're suddenly going to be this kind of, you know, panacea of all my problems, that you're suddenly going to solve everything for me. I'm not going to feel the things that I currently feel, right? Anytime that we're pushing away from a particular experience and feeling, it perpetuates because we're in opposition to it, right? If I renounce everything in the world, I'm still kind of in relationship with it because I've just kind of pushed it away, right? Rather than what would relationship be like, where I'm like, I'm good, I'm here, I'm me, and I want relationship with you, right? I love me, and I would love you to love me, rather than I can't really love me, so can you do all that for me? And then the moment that you do something that looks not like love to me, right, which is going to be every day, probably, right? In an adult relationship, there's going to be something, whether it's a tone of voice, an eye movement, a towel that you left out. There's going to be things that don't look like love, in a relationship, right? Because in an adult relationship, we're going to have love, but we're also going to have feelings that are difficult. We're going to have jealousy. We're going to have resentment. We're going to have pride. We're going to have the full human experience. So the danger when you locate over there that I've outsourced all my love and then you do a thing that doesn't look like love to me, then my ego is going to have a field day, right? Now I'm going to be really reactive. Now I'm going to push you away because I'm so dependent on you. It's like the right reaction because I'm so dependent on you. And I'm not saying, healthy dependency. Yeah. And that's the game, right? Is trying to learn how to depend on people so you trust them and you can lean into your relationship, but not that suddenly if what comes back to me doesn't look like love, I'm completely compromised, or I don't even know what to do with it, or I just make you bad. You should be more loving. When actually, if I don't have a foundation for self-love, I don't have a foundation to go out in the world and proselytize to people that they should be more loving. Possibly.
Great.
Yeah.
And just something that is coming up as I hear you saying that too is when the clients that we work with begin to come more into rapport with exactly where they're at, they become more accepting, more appreciative of exactly where they're at. And they, rather than seeing themselves as single, as being a fallen state, or it's like you're not as good as somebody who's in a relationship, or you're no longer have these negative thoughts running in your mind of like, when is it going to happen for me? And maybe I'm not meant to be in a relationship, or there's something wrong with me. When those things just begin to be silenced and they're absent from your thinking, what's really ironic about it is that you actually learn to fish rather than needing, say, more information of like how to communicate your boundaries or how to handle this situation or how to handle that situation. It's almost like the self-love in some ways becomes this like guiding North Star in your interactions to where you can sit in the uncomfortableness. You can actually be with yourself, and rather than anxiety coming up and coming from this kind of crack maybe in your character where you're not feeling connected to yourself, that just doesn't exist. And you're able to navigate these situations that are uncertain with more grace, with more poise, with more love, with less attachment to the outcome. And so that's really why we're hammering on this. And I think why it's such a tremendous concept in relating. Now, I want to just toss out a question here. So if anybody is just joined and you want to ask us a question, type it in the comment box and we'll do our best to get to it. Here's one. From Cloda.
Yeah.
Hey guys, how can you slow a guy down when he wants to move quicker than you do? Whether that is being intimate, moving in together, or getting married. What is the best way to deal with impatience? Do you want to take a crack at that?
Well, I'm just kind of feeling into it. So I think I get the kind of the feel of this. You're wanting to slow down. He's sort of pushing. But might not surprise you, Cloda. I'm going to say, make an authentic communication as best you can, right? That's based upon your experience. So, I'm wanting to slow down a little bit. I'm wanting to take a bit more time to get to know each other or build more of a foundation beneath us. And the answer to that, I think, is going to be revealing, right? If he really can't do that with you, that's useful information. He may not be willing to sort of meet you where you're at, right? And actually receive your impact, receive your influence, which is one of the key things in being partners, is that we can receive each other's influence. I'm also sometimes a bit wary of this guy, right? The guy that's like kind of pushing quite hard to say get married, or like I'm curious if there's any other information that's coming up there for you, like can I trust this, or is this real, is this sober? So taking more time generally will give you more information. And I'd also probably include some other people in on that. What reflection are you getting from friends and family? How are they finding that pace from him? But I would trust yourself, right? Like, let's say, if I want to marry you, I can probably wait a while for that to happen, right? Like, if I really have a vision that we're going to be together for a while, I can probably wait a while, because there's like, what's the big rush? And I'd also be curious to get his world around it, right? Maybe there are some pieces in there that, I'm not seeing right now. Maybe there's something that it means to him, or some religious context, or fill in the blanks. So it sounds like you need to give each other a good listening to. And I would say more than anything, the download I'm getting right now is just to trust yourself.
Yeah. But what I'm getting reading this too is that a couple things. I've seen people that are anxiously attached rush things, want to push into the next phase of the relationship because that gives them a sense of security.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to decipher, is this man's advancement of the relationship and connection with you, is it because of it's a pure desire of him just wanting to spend more time with you? Or is it that he's trying to run from some insecurity that he has that you're going to walk away?
Right.
Trying to get deeper in with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think slowing down and just like Jack said, getting his world and really understanding where he's coming from and his motivations are going to be important. This piece of him being impatient, that's fascinating. There's a little bit of that leads me to believe that there might be more fear rather than just necessarily a desire to see you more. But don't take my word for it. I think getting into a conversation with him and talking about that would be important. And also just to recognize too, like how flattering. He wants to go deeper with you. Maybe he wants to take things to the next level. And I think just acknowledging that it's flattering and that you see it and that you respect his initiative, and at the same time honoring where you're at is powerful, because you don't want to emasculate him in the process either, right? And just be offended by the fact that he wants to go quicker with you, but rather see it, presence it, acknowledge it, appreciate it, and then state where you're at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, we've got another question coming up here by Xavier. This is a gentleman. He says, there's always arguments, and it has increasingly become irritating to me that my girl just does not want to discuss about feelings, and I end up pointing it out to her. What would be your first crack at that? I know we don't have too much information there, and it's not formed in a question, but do you have any comments that...
So I would be leading with your own experience and your own feelings, right? So you're kind of leading and modeling in the territory that you're wanting. So I'll just name something that can be true for me personally. As someone that has some empath qualities, it can be quite easy for me to feel, oh, something's going on over there, something's up, even if that's just a barista in Starbucks, I can sort of get a quick snapshot feel of where someone might be. That's different than me actually revealing where I am, which is sometimes harder. So I would just check for that, check if there's any sort of being a bit over there. Because a lot of times, if we can really drop down into our experience and our own vulnerability, normally we impact people, right? So that's one good place to look. I would also maybe look at ways beyond conversation, right? For some of us, and again, I might be a bit on this camp, like talking about things helps me kind of process them, get perspective, look at them. But some people, that's not really their way in, right? Their way in might be through their body, right? So maybe you want to talk about her feelings. Maybe there's a way that you can actually move some energy with her by how you relate to her physically, how playfully you relate to her, whether you guys are both embodied, whether you just need to move into a different kind of environment. What about if we take a shower together? What about if we have a bath? What about if we go in the hot tub? What about if we dive in the sea? What about if we go for a walk in nature? What about if we go to a nightclub? I know that might not be possible right now, but are there different environments where this actually shows up a bit differently? Mostly my experience is when women feel safe, they do actually want to talk about their feelings. So I'm curious if there's anything, not that you're doing wrong, but that would have her feel more safe to explore. And sometimes if you're in the perspective of you should be sharing your feelings more with me, that she's probably feeling that from you. And so it might be having a kind of counterproductive impact, even though it can be hard to kind of rein that in.
Yeah, that's great.
I get the sort of extreme of this, just to kind of joke around with it, is this sort of classic thing where a guy is saying, hey, just relax, sweetie, just relax, right? Chill out a bit, right? And it's that doesn't have that impact, even as much as you would like it to be oh, I just say just relax, and oh, wow, cool, thank you, I'm so relaxed now. But what might actually relax someone is putting an arm around them, right? Or making them a cup of tea, or taking them for a walk, or you know what I mean? It's like actually doing the thing that has the impact rather than kind of just expecting it or talking about it. Do you get what I'm saying?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
I do. What stood out to me that I think is,
and I actually think you're really good at that, Clayton. Actually, just like, because obviously I know you personally, I think you're good at like moving into the action that might like create a possibility, change something up, kind of.
Yeah. So one angle that I'll take on this is, Xavier, I would just recommend, rather than focusing on this idea of like her sharing her feelings, maybe ask her, hey, is there anything that I can do to support you? Right? Maybe she's got something that she's going to be doing that is challenging or stretching, even asking her, hey, how was your day? Right. So if there's an impression that I get that you might be saying, I want to talk about feelings with you, or and I'm curious your motivation behind that. What is it that you're seeking? Are you curious as to where you stand with her? Do you feel anxious? Are you wanting?
Just by the way, he has a second part. I don't know if you saw that.
I did. How do I? This part right here. How do I get the negativity out of my communication and mostly out of my subconscious mind so I can focus more on loving myself? Yeah, and to Jack's point about the different contexts, I love that, and I also think just taking the pressure off of her to need to reveal herself emotionally, that there's something wrong. Just when she starts to feel safe and supported by you, she will most likely begin to share her feelings. But if she's feeling that there's a pressure on her, it's just like if a woman's feeling there's a pressure on her to have sex. That does the exact opposite of her actually wanting to be in the mood. So can you take the pressure off of her to have to reveal her emotional experience? And so what that might mean is just look for ways in which you can support and maybe be there for her psychologically. And if she is, at some point, you'll find that she's probably open to it. If you are noticing that maybe she's having a challenging day and just asking her, hey, is there anything that I can do to step up and help? Or if you identify something that she needs, step in and help, even if she's not asking for it. I mean, point blank too, you could even ask her, is there anything that I can do to help you feel more safe? Like, that's it. I mean, and see what she says. She might not have any ideas there, but just opening up that filing cabinet in her mind, she may come up with an answer at some point. There may be, it opens up the discussion for her to feel that is important to you, that you're tracking that, and ultimately will build some intimacy because she sees that you're curious around it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, maybe just one quick thing to build on that. Probably at our best as, let's just say, the more masculine energy in a relationship, which is not always true, but mostly true, we're going to be a student of that anyway. Like, we're going to be paying attention to what has her feel more or less safe. Sometimes it's hard to do, right? If you've got your own stuff going on, or if you don't understand, like, oh, I can tell the temperature's changed, but I don't really know what was happening. But just committing to being curious about that. And over time, you'll get a lot of information, even sometimes that she might not be able to articulate for herself.
Yeah.
Right. Because if I'm suddenly afraid, it's not always obvious, everything that's kind of gone into that. But if you're still safe and regulated in your system, you might be actually the more aware person in the moment.
One more point I'll add to this, because I think it can apply to any man that's watching, is just where are you providing structure, and also where are you leading? So if you can enter more into the masculine polarity in the relationship and set dates where maybe you're going out to eat, or you guys are going for a ride somewhere, or going for a walk, or you're cooking her dinner, just what can you do to kind of take care of some of the logistics and the structure of the relationship so that she can relax? Because it could be that maybe she's really in a masculine polarity with executing and getting things done and taking care of business, and she's not really connected to her heart right now, and so she doesn't have access to her feelings. So can you take some of that pressure off, and maybe that will allow her to actually connect more with herself, and then that emotional experience will be more readily available.
I like that.
All right, I'm going to toss another one up for anybody that has joined us. We're up to 92 people now. Jack and I are diving into concepts around self-love. We're also giving a $1 trial to Becoming the One for women who are single or in a relationship, and you're wanting to take some of the philosophies that you've heard Jack and I talk about over the years to the next level, to a deeper level in your own life. Self-love is a foundational principle in the Becoming the One program. So if you've got any questions about that or any specific challenges in your dating or relationship life, post in the comments. We will get to them. So I'm going to throw another one up here by Saul. I have an insecurity or fear where I forget that things don't change in a single snap and sudden instance. In your opinions, would this insecurity or fear be connected to a child wound of abandonment?
I'm not sure I fully understand that.
I have an insecurity or fear where I forget that things don't change in a single snap and an instant.
That I agree with. A lot of change doesn't happen just in the moment. Like it happens over time.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious, Saul, if what this question is you're asking, like, you're afraid of things changing quickly, and that is having some insecurity come up, or whether you're or whether it's the opposite, whether you're thinking that things should change quicker than they do, and that's bringing up an insecurity. If you want to expand on that a little bit, we'll take another crack at it. Okay. The more I love myself. Go ahead.
I was just going to add just one thing, because that piece about, the childhood fear of abandonment, right, which was real for a lot of us, right, whether that was actually on the table or not, or whether it actually happened or not. But just to distinguish that, as an adult, we could choose different language. We could say, as an adult, you can't really be abandoned, right, in the same way as a child, right? Because a child is dependent for its survival on an adult. You might feel like that, and at some level, it's probably not true, or not only true, right? So maybe a relationship would end, it would transition. Maybe you would be, your worst fear might be that you're sort of left out of the blue. But this is why this self-love foundation is so important, because what normally happens in that instance is, not only do I encode that I have been abandoned, but I've also abandoned myself, so there's no one home. Right? Whereas when I'm fully home, which is another way of talking about self-love, right? I'm here, I'm present to myself, I track myself, I care, I give myself the nutrition I need. Then that experience of abandonment might look a little bit different. So there's a sort of security in becoming the one, right? In becoming more fully true and present to who we really are, because all of us feel a little bit more secure when we're not just depending upon an idea of who we are, or personas of who we are, or I need people to look at me in a certain way to feel secure. It's like there's a sort of a deeper security of like who I really am, So just to kind of put that back through the lens that we've been looking at today.
Yeah, very cool. The more I love myself, the more lazy I get in the relationship, because I'm okay with or without him. But he says, you don't text as much or call. What should I do? Force myself? I love that question.
It's the kind of honesty there that I appreciate. Yeah.
I'll mention something. I'll name something on this that when we move from a place of changing the intention of why we're in a relationship, where if we're in a relationship because we just don't want to be lonely, versus we're in a relationship because we genuinely want to create something powerful and extraordinary with another person that would be greater than the sum of the parts. There's a very different type of relationship that's possible. So if you're in a relationship, like if you're beginning to love yourself and you're in a relationship and you realize that maybe unconsciously the reason you were in a relationship was because you were looking for validation, you were looking for some type of, you didn't want to be lonely. Once you start to love yourself, you might find that you actually have to plug into a different fuel source now to keep that relationship going, right? You might have to change your motivation of what do you want to create with this other person? And if you can get a good vision of that, and this is why I think, by the way, module 1 in becoming the one is so damn important, because we begin to pull out and look at what is the vision of what you're wanting to create with another person, and why are you stepping into that relationship? Because when you have a vision of where you're going, you can then look at your actions in the relationship and say, wait a second, are these in service of that vision or not? Right? So, because what I hear in this question is, okay, so now you're getting the self-love, and therefore you're realizing that you're okay with or without him, and then you're not wanting to text or call this person. I'm just curious, what was the reason of being in the relationship in the first place? Because it doesn't feel like that got satisfied. It might mean that you need to set another goal now and look farther in the future of from self-love as a foundation. Now, what do I want to create with this human?
Mm. Yeah.
What's your thoughts?
Yeah. So one of the things that Clayton and I work with, which some of you will be familiar with, is the Enneagram. And we have some teachings on the Enneagram as part of the Becoming the One curriculum. So what I'm hearing in here is a little bit of an Enneagram 9-ish, 9-like quality, right? Which is, it's sort of like, yeah, I'm sort of okay, I'm okay without. Now that can be a very spiritual place to be, right? Like a deeply accepting place of whatever will be, I'll be okay, will be okay. It could also be a place of disengagement, right? And the path of sort of right action for nines, but also all of us, is to be engaged in what we care about, right? It's one way of talking about sort of true productivity, really, is not just, can I run around answering all different emails and doing 100 things? It's like, am I actually engaged in my life about what matters to me, which is a heart question. What do I care about? So if you care about him and the relationship, there's probably going to be a pull to engagement. And what might be missing or getting in the way there could be your own disengagement, your own lack of engagement with him, life, the relationship, where the kind of the vitality and life force is coming through you. Of course, we all go through periods where there's maybe more of that and less of that, and times of growth and times of decay, and all that sort of accepted. But I guess I'm asking you to distinguish true acceptance from passivity or disengagement, and sometimes that is a subtle discernment.
Mm. Can you guys talk a little bit about self-love in a soulmate relationship? Because the love is so raw and real that it hurts so much with a lot of intense, raw feelings and emotions coming up. So I think what I'm hearing here is just this, like, how does self-love play a role in relationships that are karmic in nature, or that can really feel like we're on a roller coaster?
Yeah. I'm curious if there's something that you would mean by a soulmate relationship, just so that we're sort of in some kind of shared reality about that. Yeah, I mean, love is lots of things, right? And sometimes it's raw and intense and hurts, and that's, part of the beauty of it in some ways, the poignancy of it. For most of us, there's probably a sort of a stage, I think, of relationship where some of that stuff subdues a bit, so that there's more of like a stabilized partnership, right? So, people talk about sort of stages of how a relationship unfolds, and there's a stage that we could call romantic infatuation, right? Which is where we're kind of really, obsessed with each other, or one person's obsessed with the other, and there's lots of intense feelings, and there's lots of like dissolution of my own boundaries. So I feel things I haven't felt before. For most people, that's normally a phase in some ways, that then if it's going to be a more of a kind of a bonded relationship going forward, so sort of like a new energy starts to come in. And yeah, we might want to distinguish that, if I'm a very emotional person, right, the love connection might be stimulating a lot of emotions. Is that the same thing as we see each other in our light and dark, that there's a little bit more grounding perhaps to the connection, right? Because the relationships that last a little bit, I think, have some qualities of robustness, and we can do stuff together, kind of not just that we get kind of down in the depths all the time. So I'd be curious about you in this, even sort of you outside of relationship. Like, what is your experience of your own emotionality? And is there the quality that kind of comes to me in this is equanimity, right? Which is sort of the opposite of the raw and the intense. It's actually the kind of being able to not be taken just by my emotions, feeling them, but not necessarily creating too much story out of them.
Mm-hmm.
Emotions as waves.
Yeah. Back to your beginning statement about the soulmate relationship, I would be curious as to how you're defining that. Not you, Jack, but Ilkner. I am. I think that these soulmate relationships can be a real path that will shine the spotlight on the places where we're not living ourselves too. Right, the raw and intense emotions. It might feel like you're on a roller coaster, and those times when you're going down rather than up. How are you treating yourself? Where are you maybe lacking boundaries? Where are you maybe not speaking up? Where are you accepting something that is outside of your value system? So I think that these relationships that are raw and intense can be a great container for us to come out the other side with or without that person with a more stabilized, intact way of honoring ourselves and honoring the other person. I know from personal experience with my partner when we first got together, it was wild. It was a lot of ups and downs, and through that, I learned so much about myself. I learned so much about where I needed to draw boundaries. I learned so much about where I wasn't drawing boundaries. I learned so much around where I was not taking responsibility and I was blaming her. And through that, if we had not gone through those periods of turbulence, I don't think I would be able to distinguish and create the kind of alliance that we have now. So yeah, I think they can be great, like dojos, so to speak, for this concept of self-love. So we've got 96 people on. If you have joined us recently, Jack and I are talking about self-love and how that impacts relationships and dating. We've also got thank you for joining. We've also got a $1 trial to our Becoming the One program. It's our flagship product that we create about 35 hours of content that's, I'd say it's very different than our YouTube stuff. It goes way deeper. We're figuring if you're committed, if you want to step into a container with us where you're willing to allot time and your hard-earned money to actually be with us, we really go deep. We go deep into a number of different concepts. Is there anything that you want to talk about with Becoming the One, and perhaps why you're proud of it or what you've just seen it do for people?
Well, just to say, from a structural perspective, one of the other things is we have private live streams where we go for 1 to 2 hours, at least twice a month, often with a teaching segment on the front end. So it's kind of a chance for you to be in a community of people that get a whole bunch of shared reality, right? Where if you're talking about an attachment wound, or if you're talking about, how to be with an emotion authentically, if you're talking about different types of guys that you're going to encounter in dating, just that you're in a community of people that kind of get it, whether it's this community or not, I've always been a big believer in communities of support and learning communities. It's like some of my best experiences in life are being in a more intensive way with people that want some of the same things. So it's great from that perspective. And also, I don't necessarily spend a whole lot of time distinguishing us from other people in the space, but I'll just say there's a kind of realness, right? Clayton and I have our own places that we're still becoming more and more real, but that's sort of the essence of this work is how can I be using relationship to wake up, right? And that's sort of different than, how do I get a boyfriend, or what do I say on my first dates? Or it's sort of like, this is inner work for people that are waking up to some extent. So just to say that's the sort of the flavor of this is like, it's fun, it's learning, it's humble, and it's an opportunity to really focus on yourself, right? That's really what Becoming the One is actually you spending weeks and months really focusing on yourself and what is actually going on, what's actually happening. How can you let your past be in the past? How can you create new possibilities for yourself? How can you communicate from a different place? How can you become more comfortable with your own needs? How can you notice patterns in men that you've maybe dated in the past that you actually, rather than getting a whole lot of narrative over there with him, you're just like, you know what, I'm going to be doing something else because I can distinguish it. Once you can see that actually I've been doing a certain thing, you're already half the way to changing it, right? There's a curative power in awareness You know, this is really an awareness program in relationships, so that you can start to see things more clearly and notice, oh yeah, there's an iceberg over there. I don't want to hit that, because actually I can see it now. I can see it quicker, rather than I have to be taken down months investing in an unavailable guy just to realize I've done the same thing again, right? That's where I get excited about this, because an investment of time and some energy and some money can actually save a lot of just wasted energy. And that's kind of the most precious thing, right? You know, I know what it's like to have zero in my bank account. I know how that feels. It doesn't feel great, but I also know that the most precious resources really are time and energy. And that's what we're trying to help with. So
well said. Yeah, I think one of the presuppositions we hold as coaches, and really it shines through in the program, is that everybody that we're interacting with and coming in contact with on an intimate level, the people we're dating, serve as an incredible mirror for us to be able to look at our own programming and to shine the light on the places where we're holding ourselves back, where we're giving ourselves away. And ultimately, if we approach dating a relationship that way, it becomes about your relationship with yourself. And so, as Jack's talking about, we can spend weeks and we can spend months looking at ourselves. You can still be on the field. You can still be on the field out there dating, but with a perspective that you're taking responsibility and you're noticing the places where you're empowered and how to navigate those situations differently and grow through the process. So dating becomes not with the intention of, I'm dating so I can find my person, but rather I'm dating so that I can grow. This is a pathway to me waking up and finding fulfillment in myself, regardless of the outcome. And we've seen many people that are graduates have this shift in their thinking. And what ends up happening on the other side is the anxiety that begins just to disappear. The self-incriminating negative talk that you might be plagued with in the morning, at night, or around family, talking about partners, all that stuff just begins to quiet down and drop. And finally, this landscape becomes fun. It becomes fun, and it's no longer exhausting or like something that takes so much energy. That can be an exploratory process where you get to play, and it becomes less outcome oriented and more just really enjoying each step of the way, getting to know people.
Yeah.
All right, let's throw another one up on the screen here. We got one from Ian. Talk about people putting themselves in boxes. Box of lack of money, love, and how can we break through that? Ever since I started meditating, I have noticed the boxes I have packed myself into. Any comments on that? Jack, what kind of boxes do you notice put yourself in?
Probably I put myself in my meditation box a little more.
Right.
While I'm happy that you're meditating, it can obviously be a really powerful tool for awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's different things that you're talking about there, right? There's an aspect of self-love, which is I deserve to have a foundation. Some people automatically put a lot of attention on their foundation. For some of us, me included, you have to kind of learn how to do that. So if money is always an area of struggle, it might be that's because it's here to teach you some stuff, right? And it might be that it's actually inviting you to focus on it and to learn how to focus on it, and notice what happens when you're not focusing on it, right? So, for example, for me historically, every time I went to really focus on money, I'd always be kind of pulled out into like doing stuff for the community or for other people, and found it hard to just sort of notice, hang on a minute, actually, yeah, it's not good to be someone that's helping people all the time, but actually rent is a struggle, you know? So that's I think where this comes into the self-love conversation is, am I able to put attention on what matters to me, and that I matter to me enough that I don't want to have to worry about certain things. Now, are there other things in our path? You know, can we tell when, you know, a car is going to break down, or we might have some financial misfortune? Sure, it's life. There's things that are going to happen. And if that's like the ongoing pattern that you're noticing, just it's like using that as your path to wakefulness, right? So often sort of meditation feels divorced from finance and money. Actually just noticing what's the block to caring enough about this, because I care enough about myself in this territory.
Yeah. I'll just say something about boxes too. I think that it's such a human thing to do, right? It's our brain's way of making sense of reality, is by putting things into boxes so we can be more efficient with our thinking and our decision making. So if you're noticing yourself through your awareness practice, all of the different boxes you put yourself into, I would be curious around the emotion that comes up around that. Are you making that wrong? Are you judging that you're putting yourself in these boxes? Maybe there's a little bit more curiosity you can bring into that, because I put myself in a tremendous amount of boxes. I think the practice is to put myself into the boxes I want to be in intentionally, rather than finding myself in accidental boxes that are stopping me from being able to move towards what I want. Yeah, I think we might always be in a box. I mean, some of the work that I've done with NLP Marin, Carl, my teacher, one of the things he says is like, we're moving somebody from one trailer to another, right? We're moving somebody from one paradigm to another paradigm. And those might show up as boxes. But let's be intentional about the trailers let's construct the trailer that you want to move into, the box that you want to move into intentionally, so that it serves this chapter of your life, rather than living in an old box where you're just constantly running up against the wall, the walls and the limitations of that might be from childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Here's one for you, Jack. Kim Reynolds says he loves me, yet he doesn't see me much. I need more in-person visits. Do you think he really loves me?
So what I like about this is that you're in touch with a need that you have, right? Which is more in-person time. Could it be true that you guys have different needs for that? Probably. In most relationships, there is often a difference there, even if it's subtle. So what we probably don't want to do is create a narrative about how much we want to see each other and whether that means that he loves me, right? Mm-hmm. I'm also not a believer that love is enough, right? There's plenty of people that you can love and have loved. Whether that means it's a good choice for you guys to try and be in a partnership, that's like a different question in some ways, right? That's where a little bit more of the sobriety and the practicality can also come into question. So could it be that he loves you but is not available for the kind of relationship that you want? Absolutely, that could be true. You know, and you guys would want to be in that conversation in a non-blaming way if you can, just to find out, oh, okay, so your maximum is really seeing me 3 times a month. You know, my minimum is kind of getting together twice a week. And it might be that just doesn't work, and that's no one's fault. That's just kind of what it is. You might be able to negotiate a bit and find like, okay, well, you know, what about if we see each other 1 to 2 times a week and that works for you, right? Generally, to make something work, I think there is a little bit of either just we're naturally aligned enough, or there's going to be a little bit of give and take to see what's there. I would be curious from his perspective, does he think you're his partner? Like, does he think you guys are in a partnership that is exclusive and has a future and a vision? So that might, because sometimes it's like, yeah, we love each other and I love this guy and therefore I assume he's my boyfriend, but actually that's not quite his reality. So, you know, obviously I'd be getting clear about that. And just to deepen this slightly, in most of us, there is a place called I feel unloved and unwanted. And people outside will do things that trigger that place in us. Again, that might be the thing they're doing means they're not a good choice of partner for us. And it also could be that, wow, there's a place here that when I hit feeling unloved, I want to blame everyone, or I want to blame him. And life could also be calling me just to be with my own wound there a little bit, to notice, am I fully loving myself here? Like, is there something that's kind of on my side of the fence, you know, which would be covered up if we were seeing each other more, but actually it's not, and it's kind of being exposed a little bit, and that could be the path to my own liberation, my own deeper purpose. Not every relationship is meant to last, right? Sometimes they hurt because they wake us up. Most of us grow through that kind of pain more than we do through meditating, in my experience. So those would be my preliminaries.
Well said. Let's move on to another one. We're almost at the top of the hour. Jack, you got a few more minutes just to wrap things up?
Okay. These questions, yeah.
Cool. All right. So here's one that is in the same vein, but a little bit more background into what's happening with the guy. I have a guy who's expressed his feelings for me, and now he won't talk to me. What gives? Can you help me understand? I shared my feelings too. Kind of any continuation on what you were saying that could possibly land something to Roxanne?
Like, and this is for both of these, just, you know,
Yeah.
I didn't double click on this stuff. Like, I kind of feel for you, because even if I'm saying, yeah, there might be something here that is for your sort of self-love and development, it doesn't mean that it's not difficult, right? So if you've expressed your feelings for someone, and they've expressed their feelings for you, and now he's kind of dropped off, stonewall silent, I get that that would be really difficult, and I get that that would be really confusing. Yeah, you know, ultimately, either you guys have got to be able to come into some kind of conversation, right, where he can reveal what his reality and truth is to you. If that's not available, unfortunately, then you kind of have an answer, right? Like, okay, this person may have feelings for me because they expressed it, but they're not actually going to be some kind of presence in a consistent way in my life, right? And mostly when it comes to partnership, what we need is some kind of consistent presence. Or if you're not going to be consistent, you can at least communicate that to me, right? Like, hey, I need to take a week off and kind of figure myself out, or whatever. So, you know, Clayton and I could possibly speculate about what's going on over there. It's pretty hard, right? He's not here. We don't know. We have 2 sentences. So I would be a bit more focused on what's happening for you. And if he stays dropped off in this way, or even just because he's dropped off in the way that he has, he may be disqualifying himself from being in a relationship with you. And as hard as it may be to come to that point in you, part of your own self-love could be the boundary that says, wow, even if I love this person, this isn't going to work for me, to that we have a deep and meaningful, and then you go AWOL, right? So I would want to ask something like, what would it look like for you to take good care of yourself in this?
Great. Thank you, Roxanne. Thank you, Jack. All right, here's a question for you. We're going into a little bit about porn addiction here. What are your thoughts about porn-induced erectile dysfunction for someone you really care about and want to develop a relationship with?
Yeah.
I'm curious how aware he is of this. Right? Is this a label that he is? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of shame.
Like has he brought that label to you, or is that sort of something?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if he's bringing this label to you, then there gives me faith that he's aware of the problem. He's like diagnosing himself, and perhaps he's doing something about that. If this is something that you've come to the conclusion of, and you're not shared reality around it, that's a completely different scenario.
So there's a follow-up here. I think he's trying no fat, but hasn't been clear to me what his problem is. We're both on a congruent spiritual path, and this is the only problem here.
Got it.
Yeah. But what about if you took the stance like, I care about you, and I'm not willing to be in a relationship with you, kind of until this addiction is handled? Like, would it serve you? Are you someone that would be a difficult stance to take, that would sort of feel kind of uncompassionate to you, versus perhaps saying, well, for us to have a relationship where it's not going to be skewed by this addiction, why don't we do that on the other side of it? And maybe that's not possible, right? But it's sort of like you kind of have your choice. But if this is something that he needs to clear up, I wonder if it might benefit him to just have his full attention to do that.
There's something incredibly powerful about, I mean, I want to put out here that you're in a very privileged spot in his life. The fact that the two of you have this kind of intimacy, that there's a conversation around this, like self-love in this situation may look like you drawing a boundary around what you're willing to get into relationship with and what you're not willing to get into relationship with. And it could actually be one of the most loving acts of drawing a boundary to him, of like, this addiction is not something that I'm willing to be in relationship with. And who knows what happens on his side? Maybe it's the kick in the ass that's needed for him to really get to a decision point where he prioritizes relationship and love over the addiction, or maybe not. But I think you getting really clear on where your boundaries are on this is going to be super important, because it seems like you taking a stand for what you want. creates a bit more of a shared reality. So I don't know if you're I don't know if you are willing to be in relationship with him with this, and it just seems like a minor problem to you, or if it seems like a really big problem to you that needs to be handled. But whatever the case may be, I would encourage you to be open and honest and clear with where you're at. And it might be a conversation that is painful. It might be uncomfortable, but ultimately, I believe that's the intimacy is built through these kind of conversations. Yeah, and she's saying that it can rewire the brain. Seems dangerous for people that don't know that this can happen. Yeah, and so I mean, look, is he getting some treatments for this, and is he stepping in and being an active agent in his healing journey, rather than staying in the mode of feeling like a victim to it? I'm just scrolling through the comments here, and I don't see any more questions, and we are about 6 minutes past the hour. So if there are no more questions, then Jack and I think, are kind of jump off here momentarily. But Jack, do you have any closing thoughts on self-love or on becoming the one, or anything that we talked about today?
Well, firstly, just to say I've really enjoyed this. Thanks for hosting. Thanks everyone for giving some time to be here. I've enjoyed the range of the questions. For those of you that do join us in the trial, I look forward to getting to know you more. I look forward to our next private live stream, which is Wednesday week. So hope to see some of you there. My belief is that relationship is the working surface for most of our evolution now. Right? There's so many other ways that we can also grow. There's a thing that I think is happening. Some people call it relationship lessons, where it's like relationship is offering a sort of growth that it's almost a unique opportunity. And so, whether you come do this, I'm biased, but for $1, I would just say do this. It's 14 days. You're going to get you're going to get access to module 0. We don't even talk about access to module 1. You're going to get a free bonus. I think maybe even 2 free bonuses just for signing up today. You're going to get to be on a free live stream. It's like there's a lot that we're just giving for $1, and if it's not for you, you can just cancel. So that said, I'm really excited about this whole domain. That more and more of us are answering the call for relationships to wake us up. And if that's a call that you want to answer, take heed of the call. This is really powerful and important stuff. I think it's what we need individually, collectively. I think it's what the planet needs. If we can learn how to understand each other better, if we can learn about our differences and how to embrace them, if we can be on our own path of authenticity, all of that stuff, I think, is going to actually help us in this bigger time, right? Where a lot of us feel, what is going on? We don't feel safe, cultural polarization, political gridlock, them and us. It's like, we're actually talking about the language and the tools that allow you to be in a different perspective than someone and still both honor your truths. When was the last time you saw a politician do that, right? So this is like, it's for you. You want a relationship. We want to help you. But it's also for everyone. Like, there's a reason that we're doing this kind of stuff. It's actually for the whole as well, I think.
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying is that this idea of becoming the one, on one domain, maybe the access point is you have a desire to be in an intimate relationship with another person.
Yep.
And what you're ultimately getting is this in tools, perspectives, and the stance to not only navigate relationship with an intimate person, but how to navigate the relationship you have with yourself, how to navigate the relationship you have with your family, how to navigate the relationships that you have with your friends and the broader community even. And ultimately how to be authentic in that, because I do think that dance of how do I stay connected to me and connected to you simultaneously while in a system is relationship mastery. And what we have seen happen with people that struggle in relationship, and I struggle with this too. I dance with it on a regular basis and come back to it, is either I'm way too over there or I'm way too over here. And if I can find that dance with both of them, it's like, this is how we create shared reality and authenticity while being in connection.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the challenge of our times. You heard it here.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for your time and attention today. Have a wonderful weekend. And again, the link to Becoming the One is in the description below this if you have not heard about it, which seems like one of you has said that you have not heard about it. So I'm guessing there's a couple of you. Check it out. We break down the modules on that page as well. Send us any questions that you have too. And I appreciate all your presence. So,
yeah, it was just a question saying I cannot find the link to join for $1. Is it the becomingtheone.us/$?
/enroll /enroll.
/enroll.
So
okay.
Yeah. And here, I'm just going to put this one. This is the.
Probably pop it up on the screen.
Yeah, I'm going to do that right here. Hold on one second. That's interesting. You know, I thought, can anybody else see the link in the description, by the way? I just want to double check that. I put the link in the description and I'm hoping that it's there. And I'm just wondering if that is not showing up for anybody. This is it.
Oh, yeah. Great. Yeah, I just checked that. That is working. So
great. Okay.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Zach, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate
great
diving into this with you. And we'll see everybody soon, hopefully. All right.
All right.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Peace out.